Democrats and the left need to go on the political offense as we head into 2024 against Donald Trump and his MAGA cult, says a great New York Times op-ed, which in turn triggered an even greater speech by its author on MSNBC. But before we unpack all that, if you haven't yet, please hit that like, subscribe, and the alert bell. Maybe check out my Patreon. I'd appreciate the support. All right, folks, so I'm excited to talk about this because it is part of a broader topic that is near and dear to my heart, which is the asymmetry of expectations. Identifying and hopefully in our own small way helping to dismantle the asymmetry of expectations is incredibly important to me. It's a reoccurring theme of this channel. And if you follow the channel, you know what I'm talking about. But if it's your first video with me, hit that like, subscribe, and the alert bell. But the asymmetry of expectations in a nutshell is that the right and the Republican Party in this country get graded on a curve by the public, by the media, by everybody. And then Democrats and the left are held to the highest standards of performative or substantive expectation. It's irrational, it's unfair, and it makes Democrats and the left's job in politics that much harder, and it was already hard to begin with. So we need to crush it, okay? And this op-ed speaks to that asymmetry of expectations. We won't read the whole thing. It's written by Charles Blow in the New York Times, and it says, dignified silence doesn't work against Trump. And in a nutshell, what Charles Blow is saying is that Donald Trump is facing 4 criminal indictments, 2 federal, 1 in Georgia, 1 in Manhattan, and it seems like Democrats and the left are going pretty easy on Trump and prefer to take, again, the dignified silence. Just let him hoist himself on his own petard. Don't come out swinging. And Charles Blow is making the case that while that might be understandable for President Biden, who is the sitting president, the chief executive, and the man who ultimately is in charge of the Justice Department, while he may have to walk a tightrope, Democrats and the left, his surrogates, senators, commentators, congresspeople, whoever, people who are broadly identified with the coalition that Joe Biden commands, we need to be coming out swinging politically on this. We should not opt for the dignified silence. Because, as he points out, current polling has Trump and President Biden neck and neck. Now, we're a year out. That could, we're more than a year out, 14 months out. That could very well change. But it's also very sobering when you consider how terrible of a president Trump was in terms of his accomplishments and his administration, but also in terms of the legal and ethical quagmire in which he finds himself. And so this reluctance to take on Trump has allowed him and his surrogates to develop a narrative of victimhood and justified vengeance while allowing the image of timidity and weakness to harden around his opponents like plaster. So the idea being that this dignified silence has actually been weaponized and makes us look weak to a lot of people. And our lack of pushback against the narrative that the right and MAGA are offering suggests that perhaps we believe it's true, okay? So... And with his failure to engage this campaign of cowardice, Republican voters, already primed by Trump to disbelieve facts and believe conspiracy theories, are robbed of any debate that could help modulate their views. These voters exist in a void of veracity, and Trump fills it with his version of truth, anti-truth, okay? Now, there's at one point here, there's a really good line. Okay, still, President Biden adheres to a dignified silence approach, clinging almost religiously to the notion that voters will recognize and appreciate the difference between a restorer and a destroyer. That may very well be the case. The continuity of the republic as we know it depends on it. But it's perfectly reasonable to question the wisdom of that approach and to be apprehensive about it. And he uses the example of Secretary Clinton in 2016 because, of course, we knew all about Donald Trump at that time. And she took the, again, Michelle Obama approach, when they go low, we go high. And it didn't work out for her. There's a really good line in here. The idea of a dignified silence has a long political history, but its utility and efficacy is unclear in a modern context. It feels like a Happy Days nostalgia in a Walking Dead reality, which is a great line. But there's also, he uses the, exactly. At the very end of the Clinton example, Charles Blow points out, the asymmetry in the way Trump and his opponents engage with each other gives Trump a big advantage. That is the asymmetry of expectation about which I constantly complain. He unleashes his barbs nonstop and erratically until one of them hits. His opponents keep refusing to respond in kind, maintaining respectable restraint while racking up political wounds. Great op-ed. I encourage you to read it. But now I want to get to Charles Blow's appearance on, I think it was Morning Joe, in which he discusses this. And we're not going to play the whole thing because it's 12 minutes. But he goes on this very frustrated rant. And I love it. And I would, again, encourage you to check out the full interview. But I'll let him take it away.
and some concern here as to what to do. So, Charles, but part of the White House's theory of the case is that they don't have to do it because others will. And they think in particular that next year, when these cases actually go to trial and there is nonstop news coverage of Donald Trump in a courtroom, and even if it's just the one, a federal election interference case in D.C., the one that seems to be built to move the quickest, they think that will drive home the point to suburban voters, to independent voters. Look, we can't go down this path again. We can't elect this man again. What do you think? Is that enough, or is that not aggressive enough?
Well, I want you to think about what we've just said, what you've just said, what Eugene just said. Like the president can't engage because it's an active investigation. At what point does the person who is running, literally running on a platform of defending and protecting democracy, not engage on the biggest threat to that democracy? It is likely that there will be litigation all the way through the election. Are we saying that the president of the United States, who is running against the guy who is the greatest threat to democracy, will not be able to engage on the issue, on the fact that this person he's running against, if he ends up being the Republican nominee, he cannot say that this person is indicted on all of these counts? That it seems insane to me. I think we're living or trying to operate as if things are normal when they are absolutely not normal. And the former president has signaled in every possible way that if he ever gets back to the White House, he will break the norms completely. He has said that he would like to suspend parts of the Constitution. Conservative groups like the Heritage Foundation are leading a charge to draw up plans right now that would make it possible for Donald Trump on day one to start to dismantle the federal government. I don't understand what we're saying here. I don't understand what we're saying, like that we're holding the powder dry, that we are that there's another time that we're going to be able to do this, that there's a season that's going to come that's close to Election Day when all of this will change, all of our strategies will change, the surrogates will step in and do the work that the president can't do. It seems crazy to me on some level to think that there's time to get this right.
So again, that full interview is awesome. He speaks multiple times. Others weigh in as well. And there's some agreement among the panel that you saw there. For my money, I completely agree. I'm not a psychic. I don't have a crystal ball. It's entirely possible that President Biden or his surrogates taking an offensive political message, it may not work. It may not be. It may very well be that not only do we have an artificial asymmetry of expectations, perhaps it's deeply ingrained. Perhaps we on a fundamental level really do and just inevitably expect more from Democrats and the left than Republicans and the right. That may not be resolvable in this election cycle. But for my money, let's try it. Let's try to dismantle the asymmetry of expectations. Let's take the offensive political energy, the inertia. Let's not allow Donald Trump and Colt 45 to dictate terms of the engagement. Let's try something else. And again, as far as the president himself, I understand him exercising the most restraint, and Charles Blow does as well. But even then, with President Biden, there's a time and a place and a responsibility to step up and say, no, this isn't normal. I'm not weighing in on a minor tax issue. I'm not weighing in on a minor civil issue. Donald Trump tried to overthrow the republic in 2020. He denies the outcome of a free and fair election, and he and his surrogates, as Charles Blow points out, and as we've discussed in previous videos, they are drafting plans to destroy separation of powers, checks and balances, to make every federal employee under the executive branch at will and purgeable by a bad faith authoritarian leader like Donald Trump. This is an imminent threat too, to the United States. And it's not business as usual, and we shouldn't be obligated to pretend that it is. So I encourage you to check out the interview. I encourage you to read the op-ed. And again, in our own small ways, you and I need to push back on this in every which way. When we get in conversations with friends and family, strangers on the internet, whoever, and they try to, low-key prop up that asymmetry of expectation, hand wave the stuff Trump does, overemphasize stuff that Biden does. Say, no. We're not operating on this anymore. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. And if you all can dictate terms of engagement, if you all can play politics ruthlessly, then so can we, and so shall we, and so should we.